Sabay di, Anoy.
Ayun.
Sabay di, Pinong. Welcome, everyone, to Voices from the Laboratory. This is a podcast that centers the experiences of Lao diaspora women, sharing our passions, joys, and creativity. And today I have my friend and comrade, Anoy Di Costanza. Anoy, please take a moment and introduce yourself to our audience.
My name is Anoy. I am a podcaster myself, heart of an immigrant, and I also am in the phases of deconstructing everything to feel what's ancestral to me. So it's a weird thing because I don't know if I have the language, but the best language I could use right now is probably like a liberation journey. So yeah, I'm borrowing that language right now.
I heard words like deconstructing and ancestral and liberation, and we're gonna dig deep into all those things because I'm all about deconstructing fucking shit up. But first, I want to ask you, how is your chai today?
Honestly, it's really great. I'm in a really good space of content. And I think it's because I'm held in community and I know that whatever I'm doing right now, there is like a lot of there's a lot of support in terms of my culture is being integrated well and also being closer to dirt and nature and, you know, the sky is really grounding me every day, and that's been helpful. And yeah, I'm feeling really good right now.
It's just been a uproar kind of where I am, and so to hear you say that you're great in the midst of all of this chaos to find solace in your community and nature, I really admire that about you. And, like, you make visible your learning, especially your liberation journey, as you've called it. What would you say is liberation? Like, what is it that we are not free from?
I will borrow Maisha T. Hill's words, and it's simple, and it's the freedom of choice. To be in a relationship where people give you your choice, and then for you to acknowledge that you take away other people's choice is there are obviously systems that hold us from doing what we want and choosing what we want, and how we're in community that also takes away those choices. To be fully aware that choices taken away is the awareness, and also to create space that continuously gives choice. That in itself is liberation for me, and it starts to unravel how I relate to people, to unravel, like, the right and wrong. You're right, what you think, even though I disagree, and I'm also right. Like, you get to be who you want to be, and I get to be who I want to be, and maybe we are in community, and maybe we are not. And that to me is a simplified liberation, and it's harder than you think because you're getting messages, right? How to parent, what success looks like, what we've been taught in family structures and all of this stuff. And then as somebody who is learning about yourself, like, you can't express it because maybe we come from such a different culture. And so I've noticed that my mother was on a liberation journey and her fight for it was real. And only until I went on it that she went on it. And the resistance that she had was real, and yet I also noticed how hard it was for her to be heard. And, like, even I took that away, you know? So it's like when you acknowledge that you took someone's liberation away, especially someone you love, it just cracks open this like, "Holy shit, like, I didn't love them for them." Then you question love, right? Like, what is love? Like, are you doing this? Do you want people to do things for you, or are you gonna love them even when they're X, Y, and Z, despite the world falling apart? You then recognize how many people use love as a tool of oppression, transactional, and becomes a bigger thing. And that's why the liberation journey is everything. It's what you eat, how you speak, what you think success is, your job, how you get paid, all of those things.
It's ongoing, right? Because the more you learn, the deeper you go into realizing the lack of choice that you have. And I appreciate that you bring up that word. This is very reflective, right? To look back on decades of your life and realize that you didn't have choice. What did you realize about the things you didn't have choice about?
It's not so easy to say I didn't have a choice. I opt into everything, so I have choice. I hold myself accountable. But what I thought was my choice as I choose these paths, they weren't mine. Because in the system of white supremacy or whatever, we're really not taught to love who we are. Doesn't matter what race or ethnicity you are, especially when you're not held in the system, when you're looked down upon, and how you survive gets what the things you love gets scrutinized. You didn't think this was a choice, but belonging, you choose where you want to belong. And because the sounds and noises and the social fabric, we're upholding whiteness. Academia, we silence ourselves in our own expression because it's not made for white people to understand. So we just become the whiteness that we are. And it's like, that's the choice. I chose to be part of the whiteness in every day of my life. And now I'm like choosing myself. It's a deliberate choice where when I wear this, it's like I'm deliberately resisting whiteness to even start talking about Black and brown people, indigenous people, to learn about them, right? These are the choices I have to make that isn't easy, that isn't in the textbooks, that isn't perpetuated by the school systems or the church systems. I could say I didn't even know I had choice, let's say, as part of the assimilation process.
I heard you saying that some of your choices took choice away from another person. What's the relationship between this individual liberation and choice and its connection to our society? Because liberating self, loving self, right, is the beginning. So, what does it mean for like your relationships, your community, your culture?
Me holding anyone to a binary would be in some form taking choice away from them. And we're not taught to hold all of these complexities. So when I say I take choice away, it's like I'm thinking I'm giving my kid, I'm not giving my kids a choice to go to school. And I know I'm taking that away from him. My kids don't want to go to school, but you have to, right? So these are the things I'm working towards as while I'm constrained in the system. Like I try to find choice wherever I can, and I take that away because he could be learning in nature. He could be learning and developing other skills, but instead he's learning to sit at a table for 6 hours. And that's something we talk about a lot in the house. As a mother, I will say that yes, I put myself first. And also, I have to put my children's safety, financial safety, all that first. And that is where, like, you're perplexed all the time. So now you're trying to give your kids little choices, and they create a sense of rebelliousness and when they're young, and it's a great thing, but also it's hard for you to manage. And I always say, like, I'm ungovernable right now. Like, I'm unmanageable. If I go to any job, like, I don't know if anyone will want to hire me because I literally do whatever the fuck I want. It's a little bit of a fear. And I'm teaching that to my kids. I'm like, oh, he's going to be pathologized. He's going to be punished. And at the same time, it's like, it's really liberating to see him express dissent. And I want to give him that choice to be expressive, and it's complicated. It's not 4 choices, it's actually a ton of choices.
Yeah, I've heard a similar dilemma with parents who want to resist some of these oppressive systems, like the schooling system, and it comes time to choose a school for your children, do you wanna use your child to make your point? When it comes to your children, do you make exceptions to your own liberation? I always think about the master's tool and that idea, that question of, is it possible to dismantle the house using the tools of the house?
If I can be absolute about it, no, we can't. How could we completely dismantle white supremacy when we grammar correct, when we shame each other? Like, we're all doing that, right? Do you have these credentials? And then we
Mhm.
hold other people, like, it's just a link of oppression trickle down, just slowly chipping away things like that, and it's actually not that important if you don't go to school today. It's actually not that important if you don't get good grades. It's actually not that important to be on time. These are what's chipping away and dismantling the system and challenging it. So, we can do it, it's just if we do it out of safety, it's gonna take a lot longer, and I don't think everyone's ready for it. We've got people teaching, you know, decolonization using the language, and it's like, "Well, are we ever gonna get there?"
What is that conversation like in your home? Basically resisting meritocracy and time constructs.
My kids don't follow any of these constructs, but it's being pushed on them, so it's actually easier to have these conversations with my kids. They're already going, "Why do we have to go to school to learn? Why don't you teach us?" It's like, so duh. It's not that hard to dismantle from children, and what's happening is the people who hold the power are the ones that really need to do the dismantling, and they're also the ones who uphold it. So, the conversation with my kids when it's, like, time construct and things like that, they already don't follow it. It's me going, "Oh," you know? So, it's actually easy, but not so easy to manage ungovernable children, or myself is ungovernable. So but that's being ungovernable is ancestral. What I could say is we don't have enough conversations between adults. Besides, like, the last 3 years, I had no conversations like this until I intentionally put these conversations in front of me and intentionally found people. I did not have dismantling conversations. It was always follow the rules, obey, do as you're told, suppress any dissent.
So what prompts that in somebody that is in their mid-30s to start questioning and wanting to dismantle?
I think you have to have some sort of breakdown. You have to be emotionally you can't just read it in a book. You have to have a complete meltdown, I think. What the F? Like, I totally believe this, and then the complete opposite has happened to me. Or I believe that these people were helping me and they've just tortured me. I think it has to be complete breakdown somehow. And then your empathy starts to you need to question where your empathy is, and you need to question, are you a compassionate person? How come I can't relate to these oppressed people? Like, you have to do all of the interrogation, and I think that's when it starts. And it takes people to challenge you, so if you're not looking for it, you're probably not gonna get challenged. I don't know. I feel like that's also not representative of how you could do it. You could study and study and study as well, I guess, and then finally leads to some, empathetic approach. But if you're just looking at the media, if you're just reading, comforting books, I don't think you can get there.
I would say it's like the confluence of those 2 things, right? Like, I don't think reading in isolation or even just experiencing things in isolation will lead to that. It's kind of like you need the experience, and then there's also, like, this body of knowledge that's kinda giving you the language or putting it into, like, the pieces, and it does take time because it's uncomfortable. The breakdown that you're describing is yeah, it's uncomfortable to think about the way that you were raised and these values and ideologies that were fed to you, and you're like, "Wait, that doesn't really work with how I want to live my life," or like, even when I think about Buddhism and our spiritual practices, and then I think about how hyper capitalistic we are here in the US, it's kind of like a washing of these practices. Like, I went to my mom's. She has a room that her closet that's just filled with clothes that had, like, tags on them. So, when I think about that, I'm just like, it's very complicated. There's, like, the Buddhism, the minimalism, the simplicity that they came from, but then there's also the refugee camp experience where you were on another extreme where you had nothing, like, we were homeless, and then to come to the US and, like, see this opportunity, these cash cows. I think that's really hard to navigate, especially when you are also now, like, not educated in the school system here and the language system here, and it's like, you've been trying to survive for a long time, and now you're just like, "Wait, I survived and I earned this, right? And it's mine." Those are conversations that I I try to have with my at least my mom often.
Well, we do have a lot more privilege than our parents. It's those who have the most privilege. It is our responsibility. And when I see my parents or my dad right now, I want him to have whatever he wants, no matter if it's like the worst thing that he wants. He gets to have it. And then it's my job to not go against what he says in a combative way, but to accept that that's his joy and he gets to earn that and have that without the burden of because he doesn't want the burden. If you want the burden, you can have the burden. Like we have the privilege to dismantle, to undo, to unlearn. And I think if my dad did it, he wouldn't have a job. He doesn't know how to build, or maybe he would. I'm not sure, but I feel like I still want to protect their joy in some form. And that's why when I talk to my aunties in Laos, I really observe them with such a different kind of love, and they still repeat certain things that even Lao Americans repeat. You know, they still want the same things. But I'm just honestly in an observation mode where they're actually outside every day, tending their garden, living with 10 people, multi-generational home. They say they want something Western, but what they do is completely different. It's a different kind of ease too. Like they want the easy life and they think working the garden is hard. And where my mother was in the West, working and then also trying so hard to maintain a garden and have all the spaces. We want what's on the other side. And like, I think you and me, we have this unique voice and the willing to express it is to see both like the beauty in Lao and to maintain that or wanting them to maintain that and be appreciative of what they have. And also, knowing that what we have and what they want with from us is actually, it's cool. And we feel a lot of emptiness.
I just had this convo with my mom because my dad will post pictures of, like, his new car, his new boat. He'll send it to relatives back in Laos, but he's not sending pictures of him being exhausted after working 2 jobs. He's not sending pictures of our bills, like, "You pay this much for all of these things, health insurance, mortgage, water bill." I think we also are complicit in perpetuating those Western, luxuries, and so I get that responsibility that we hold, like, being in the liminal space and trying to understand both, and also being able to help them reconcile the differences. Because, like, I always talk about how they don't really know about how we grew up over here, especially before Facebook and the internet. We couldn't really show them video or pictures or, like, explain to them we went to school and had to assimilate, or we, were bullied or change our names or, like, even to talk about race, right? I actually really enjoy those conversations with my cousins, people who are my age, because it's a world of difference. Like, even with time, like, one of my cousins, he works for a company that is based in the West, and he's always, like, time focused. His siblings will, like, mock him and clown on him. They're like, "Bob's always late. We gotta go." And it just made me crack up because I'm like, "Yeah, blah, blah, don't care about that." And I know people I've had my friends from the West who have gone to Laos and come back and complained about that, and I'm just like, "Sabay, sabay." People are always saying that, right? Like, I also have relatives who they don't wanna work in the garden.
We could do a swap, right? Like some sort of swapping program would be great. Like, you wanna know how it is? Okay.
Yeah, especially for people of our generation who, like, don't have a clue. I think that that'd be a really dope learning experience for everyone. I think that's why it's important if you can to go to Lao and, like, experience it. I know a lot of people who still haven't for whatever reasons, many reasons. I guess if you assimilate in the US and you don't have kids or anybody to probe your identity and your ancestry in, like, a genuine loving way that you could go through most of your life in America and not feeling the need to inquire, because there's so many distractions and there's not a lot of messaging that's telling you, you should care about this little country on the other side of the world." That's maybe a good segue to talk about what your mom, who passed away recently, she was basically supporting her village, right? And the school in particular. So tell us more about that. How long has she been doing that? Did you always know about this?
I mean, I've heard about off and on her doing this, but until social media came along and me paying attention to my mom more often, I regret so many things, but at the same time, it's like the awakening, the time wasn't right. She's probably telling me this all my life, but I wasn't ready to hear it until I heard it, until I saw it. She's always been sending money to Laos. She's always been so close to the village. She loved her mother dearly, lived across the street from her sister, and then, you know, her nieces and nephews. It's about 200 people. I remember 2008 going with her, just me and her going to Laos. And she was like, "Yep, that's the school we're building." And I saw my auntie wave at me, rolling the cement down, and my uncle, helping. And it was like just my family building a school. I'm like, what are we like in some weird commune situation? I didn't even have that language. I was just like, oh, okay. Family's building a school. La, la, la. Walking away, no big deal. I would also come with my Western lens because I was like, what, 24, I believe, when I went back there. And I would ask the kids, what do you want to do when you grow up? And they'd be like, we just want to work in the garden. And I just thought that was so unambitious. Why don't you want more for your life? There was such a hierarchy in my thought and almost belittled them in a way that they didn't strive for more capital. And I reflect on that a lot. And I'm like, wow, I've grown so much to think that that was where I was when I was at the peak trying to get a degree and trying to look hella cool, trying to fit in and whatever, be all about the trends and look successful. When really now it's about figuring out what authenticity means to me, being real. And that's also very precious that they want to work on the land. Especially knowing that real estate in America is you can't even buy a house at 7.5 APR. Like, what? You have land? Wow, that's gold. To work? Yeah, how it's changed, right?
Yeah, Laos is at a very interesting place. It's cool that you went in 2008. That's like a pretty long time ago. I didn't know a lot of people my age who had gone in their 20s. I was there recently and I was with this man in a car with like a bunch of other Europeans and me and this Lao driver from Bakse. And he was just really fun to talk to, and he just had, like, a lot of stories to tell, and he kept reminiscing about decades ago, like, in the '70s and the '80s when he was growing up, and he just basically talked about how people didn't have to work. Like, not work. I mean, everybody works. Work is a part of life, but not like they had to leave their villages to go and seek work for a company. He talked about how people could have lots of kids and have big families back then because all you had to do was go to the river and get fish to feed them. He really was very nostalgic about that. So it's interesting to hear from different people who are on, like, both sides of the the diaspora and how they're witnessing the changes that are happening in Laos that they are not really empowered in. There's a lot of foreign interest in Laos and foreign just being like the countries right around it. So it's wonderful to know like your mom always had that connection and you were able to have that experience of talking with those children that you're thinking of almost 20 years later and just a different way that you're looking at what this child said and how you have grown. I think it's also really cool. I didn't know that your family built the school. Every school that I hear about being built in Laos is built by some NGOs. That's amazing that they built the school with their hands.
I actually think it
And
might have been the first school they built.
wow.
So, the concept of institution was not really understood by them because that's how far out into the city life they are. When I went back, they were just asking for pens and paper. They didn't have a school to go to, and now I see that these children have a foundation and they have teachers. It's, like, amazing, and that was 20 years ago, which if you did it through institutions, of course, it would be bigger, better, cleaner, nicer, but I'm here just trying to get them, like, flooring for their school or just to assist, like, my mother would put windmills in their land just to help the wind process through their farms. Those are the kinds of things that she was involved in, and she would be the capitalist mind for them, and she would ask them to do things. She'd be like, "Let's improve this property because I have property there that is verbal that my aunt has under her name, but property there that he wants to continuously renovate and possibly get new capital in there because they don't know how to make capital. They're just living their life, right?
Yeah, they don't often have access to the market.
But we're turning into a very capitalistic system even for them because of taxes and other people coming in. They're unable to survive. The only way they're surviving is because of the land and because they have each other. They don't have the professionalism. They don't have the education. They don't have the capital. You have to have capital and make more capital. I mean, I watched my aunt yesterday put bags of rice and they're like 8 bags of rice. I go, "What's that for? Are you gonna sell it?" She goes, "Well, we use it and then we sell the rest." The intention is always to sustain and then make capital. So if there's nothing left, they don't make capital. It's hard because sometimes they do need a car. Sometimes they do need new things that they have to buy and they can't make. That's where my mom's what helping sustain in a world that's turning away from the way they live. I'm creating a some sort of monthly thing, $5, $10, or I don't know how it's gonna work out yet for people who want to be part of this story, their story, hear them, see them, get insight on what it is to be Mahasai in Laos, working the fields, kind of like an insider scoop. Because when we do it on social media, it's always like the prettiest pictures and the most a very touristy kind of feel. But I wanna create a space where if you want to know how they live, where you can have a membership where you can get kind of the raw footage, because she sends me my cousin sends me lots of raw footage, and then hopefully that can help them sustain some things that they need. And I'll put that in like the Heart of Immigrant website. So hopefully that'll be up soon.
So that's a way that you're trying to continue your mother's legacy, because I know that you feel now obligated to be that capitalist support from the West, right? In a world that is, you know, unfortunately changing at a pace that a lot of people in Laos are having trouble keeping up with, especially if you don't have family in the West to support you, right? It is damn near impossible.
We owe the country, when I say we, I mean the US owes that country so much. Like to the damages they've done and then to just leave them to, fend for themselves is another story for another day. But it's like we also came here on the pretenses of privilege. And so do we leave them behind? That's where I am right now. It's like, do I leave because I have the privilege? Do I leave them behind? And obviously the answer is no.
So one of your ideas is to kinda get us immersed into the life of your Mahasai relatives. That would be really cool to see, and I love that you you feel more connected to your family over there. It sounds like you talk to them very regularly. How is your how's your Lao been with them? Because I know you've always expressed your ambivalence with speaking Lao, but I've also seen where you get down in Lao with your aunties or when we're playing them. So what's your language journey been like?
Me, I speak with so much energy and bruteness. I guess I would just say bruteness. It's like way more than even they are over there. I'll show you a clip of my dad, the way he speaks. I'm like, I got it from my dad. I mean, he tells stories like he's using curse words and, body language and sound effects and giggles that are just like, in fact, yeah, like, I don't know if you ever heard him laugh. He's like, yeah, like very, and then the way my mom, moms, when they make a drum, it's like their drum roll after the joke's been made.
Mhm.
The all the women say the same kind of have the same kind of laughter. You ever heard it? So it's like that's how I it just comes out, and I love being able to express them with my aunties who may not be like me, but, like, understand that that's my like, I'm my mom, and I see her, she looks just like my mom, and then I think that she sees me as my mom, and it's bridging that space that we're missing with my mom, and it's really beautiful, actually, so, yeah.
I'm inspired to keep in touch with my family in Laos a little bit more too because I got to spend a few weeks there over the winter and I just I loved spending time with them. Like it was just what you described. It was like storytelling and uproarious laughter all the time. And a lot of it was just based on like, oh no, no, you say that over there in America. Like you learn. So I'm constantly thinking about the things that like travel to the US, but also the things that we're actually bringing back to Lao and sharing with them to show them this is this is what it means to be Lao American, right? Like our parents did actually a really great job of transporting and translating senses, right? Smell,
Mhm.
taste. Like when I went to Lao for the first time, I wasn't startled by anything really, and it made me appreciate what our diaspora was able to do, like, especially considering the refugee camp experience. Like, how do you even bring any materials with you?
They have each other, like, I'm witnessing those in Palestine, and it's yes, they're going through this horrible crisis, and yet I still see beautiful smiles, and they're still finding joy, and when I look at these refugee pictures from, like, different Facebook groups that are searching for each other, they're happy, and I'm like, "Wow," like, we find joy because we have community, and sometimes the refugee camps really creates that for us.
Yeah.
And and that's something that I am seeing, "Oh, are you dealing with that?" And also smiling, and it's just natural and infectious. And that's one piece of, like, silver lining in, refugee camps.
Yeah, I mean, the refugee camp experience was part of forging that Lao American identity, right? Because it brought people from all over the country that normally they wouldn't know each other because a lot of places in Laos were very isolated. Like it took days to like travel between towns and cities. So yeah, that forged part of that.
It tightened our community before we got to America, and even though we didn't get placed the same places, we just were like, "What refugee camp were you?" "What year were you at?"
Yeah.
"Were you in it?" And there is a thread of being a refugee.
There's a common experience. I've also witnessed it also created a competition between a lot of people because the scarcity aspect of it, like who's gonna get to go, is it your time to go? Who is getting money sent back to them from their relatives who are already in the US? And so I've also seen it where it's caused a lot of suspicion among people and distrust just to acknowledge some of the different ways I've seen the refugee experience manifest and part of that trauma people still carry.
There's so much to say about just the experience of being a refugee in Southeast Asia.
I was wondering, so does your family in Laos, like, are you able to share with them through the language and culture, like, what this means for you to, like, be more connected to them, to, like, step into your mom's role? Like, do you think they have an understanding of what liberation or growth means for you, or do you think you're able to communicate that to them?
No, that's not a subject that I talk about with them. I am always practicing with them. Okay. So we'll talk about men and the patriarchy. Are you gonna get married again? When was your husband? Do you want children? These just things of getting to know each other will reveal where they are in comparison to my journey. I feel like they're liberated in some ways that I'm not. And I also see their struggle financially. So you could have all this land and no money, like what? Because you don't know how to create capital. That's something is an exchange. And I emphasize, maybe too much actually, my opinion on that their life is so good when I talk to them. I try to not make it like my life is great. Yes, we have this, and I maybe overemphasize how much I really admire them, and I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but we talk about everything. Their ability to sustain multi-generational family alleviates their worry. Like, we had a great conversation last night for 2 hours in the field, and they went into the hut home, and I watched the kids eat rice that they just it was just amazing, and I tell them what I admire, and I think that in itself is, like, reinforcing that they have a good life, and also they wanna come to America. This little girl, she's 4 years old, like, "I wanna ride on a plane to see you," and at the same time, like, "Yes, yes, but US Embassy has to approve you to come because they don't let, people like us just enter. We're not Europeans. We're just not the right skin tone with the right last name, and it's hard. They just can't vacation in America." So I want them to kind of create a space where it's really beautiful what you have, especially because you can't leave and come here.
That's been something I have also been emphasizing with my family too, and, I don't necessarily think it's a good or a bad thing, but I think it's important to counter the dominant narratives of what they're getting from social media and also from people who, like, flatten and wash their stories, like, "We came here, we got the American dream," but what is Like, what was that? What did we have to give up that people who are our generation or younger are now trying to seek and re-know? So I think we have a unique experience that this happened large scale, like so many Lao people, so many other Southeast Asian Americans. And so I think we're at a place where we're looking back and we're reflecting and we are questioning some of these things like the American dream, model minority, myth, even what it means for us to be part of the Asian American identity and how we are often erased in that regard. I find it important to just tell them like what they have because maybe they don't realize it because they haven't left Lao and they haven't been to a place where they are the only one of them and constantly having to explain who they are. There's an ease in that, right? Of just like, I'm just a person. I don't have to be Lao, sometimes Lao American, sometimes Asian American, sometimes Southeast Asian. And also time. When you talk about choice, like a lot of us don't have choice in what we do with our time or even with our labor because we work for this big institution and now we have all these things to pay for, like a family. So when I meet people online, I'm like, yo, you could just go down to the river and just hang out with your friend every day. Or like your family lives across the street. Our family, we're like a flight away. And that's the norm. That's been what's been ingrained in us. Like you have to leave your home and you have to go to these cities and like chase capital and what happens to your relationships and your culture and the ways that we try to restore through some of the things that we've done together, peer coaching and laboratory and check your privilege groups. For me, when things are not the obvious, I have a lot of fun really just explaining to them what they have or even just like how cold it is here. Because they're like, "No, we don't want that."
Yeah. It's it's so different of a world. And I think the further you get out from city, it's even more different and just so many ways to appreciate each other. And I think that's what's so cool is that they appreciate my life and I appreciate theirs. And that's really beautiful. Before we could be this aware, we would have been in judgment like I was in 2008, right? And that's what the liberation journey is to acknowledge that your life is beautiful and it's different and my life is beautiful and different. And I don't necessarily want you to be like me, but we can be together and we can be in community, you know?
What's next for you? You talked about one of your offerings. Are there any other ways that we can support you or tune into some of the things that you are wanting to do? Ways that we can connect?
I have a lot of things that I've been thinking about. And because the construct of branding has been stopping me, the concept of marketing in the way that is taught to me or what I learned, I had to dismantle that. Now, offering whatever the fuck I want, whenever the fuck I feel like it, and it's me. It's me, and I sell harnesses and suspenders. I
Wait, show us what you're wearing.
no, it's I just put the Lao thing on the pabia.
That's hot.
I wanna do, like, costume things, but my first offering is going to be a sewing group, and it's not necessarily a sewing group. It doesn't center around sewing, it centers around actionality and liberation, and then with that, we will do projects together. It will be membership, or I'm actually gonna do a test run just for the first month where we do something together, and we do, like, an accountability session for the first month and see how that goes. Hopefully, it'll be a beautiful membership where I don't have to market myself so hard, and I can just, like, reveal the rebellious anarchy behavior happening in our groups, and that we don't have to follow any rules, and but also we're holding each other in projects while also understanding, like, the fucking system is falling, or we have to operate and we get to vent out about whatever is on our heart. Because many of the sewing groups out there, it's always no politics. When you go into groups on Facebook or whatever, they're always like, no politics. I'm like, no, fuck this shit. It's political. This sewing group is political. So it is a different group, and we're gonna just like test the waters, and that's gonna be my first offering for everybody.
It sounds very process oriented. Whatever you make is just an artifact of the process. So it sounds like the conversations that are going to be had there and the building and the learning is really like the center of it. So
Yeah.
if you want to join Annoy, right? And so from your heart, from your jai in a politics welcoming space, you should definitely hit up Annoy. I don't sew regularly, but I'm always down to interact with art and like try to just embody different things. And you are surprised the things that you think of, the things that are evoked when you are sewing and doing things with your hands or being like in a meditative like action.
Yeah, it takes you out of the process. It takes you out of the Excel spreadsheet, it takes you out of the grammar, it takes you out of the standard. And then, you know, to physically create something is like, oh shit, you have some power. And if you could use it and someone else can appreciate, that's even better. I'm honestly just so tired of virtual spaces where there's nothing here. And then I feel like it's just kind of been perpetuating so much gaslighting because we're just listening and consuming, but not creating. And so there's going to be different opinions all the time. So I wanted to just focus on sewing and doing it together, bringing back community and possibly help people create capital, that and things they love.
Well, we will keep a lookout for that. And I know that you're planning to go to Lao in the near future. Do you wanna share any thoughts or anything that you're planning or even just wondering leading up to that?
I plan to go 2025 with my family, and that scares me so much. My kids are young, but at the same time, I just can't wait for them to like be judgmental because I didn't have that sense of awareness in 2008. And I'm like, I kind of want to teach them how to be aware of certain things before they go. We can start to question, why do I not like this? It is like a deeper conversation. And also the language is going to be difficult. And to be a minority English speaking in my auntie's village is like, we're the minority. I want them to feel that because, having biracial kids, there's a level of privilege that comes with it. And they never got to experience our assimilation process. And not that I want them to be tortured by the process, but just to notice that there is a deep struggle when you do not speak the language of the land. I don't know. I don't know why I want my kids to struggle a little bit. Ah, but that in itself is going to be a teachable moment, those discomforts. Just interested to see what kind of data comes out of that trip is exciting.
And you'll get to see that school that your family built. And look at
Yeah.
get over that they built.
It looks like a house. I have pictures. It looks like a house and it's just walls and
But still, to, like, recognize a need in your village and for people to come together and, like, just make it happen. That's the epitome of village life, right? Because you are not touched by government and by a lot of institutions.
yeah.
And I think there's so much learning to do
Yeah.
from the idea, not that just the idea, but really, like, the physical place of the village, because my mom is also from a village, and that was my favorite part of being in Laos, really, was being in my mom's village in, like, a very unrushed way because we went there to do a boon, but then we had time after, and so my mom showed me her elementary school where my uncle used to teach, and Just walking around, people recognizing you, or even if they didn't, you could ask a few questions and know exactly who they were. What really stuck with me was the way that the village came together to do the bun, and the buns happen all the time. Every house is having a bun like every other day, but regardless, you still get the help of the whole village coming together, making the pakwan, making the food.
They work in harmony. Bun is so complex.
So complex.
Like, the details are there, and you're, like, just folding banana leaves.
They know, like, these are the things we have to make, and it's not exactly the same every time because they also are responding to what's available to them because everything is from nature and is so beautiful.
It really is.
I'm looking forward to that for you,
Yeah.
and I think taking your young bicultural family there is going to be quite an experience. It's gonna be discomforting, but I think it's gonna be amazing for your family and for your kids.
Yeah.
We're at the end of our time together. I wanna thank you so much, Anoy, for joining me in this conversation. We've had so many, many conversations, but it just
Never enough.
never enough because, I just appreciate your thoughtfulness and your vulnerability in all the conversations that we've had. I always learn a lot from you. So I just appreciate you taking the time out of your day to talk to me and to share about your journey to liberation, this ongoing journey. And I think it's so inspirational to a lot of people to like see your process. There's no product. There's nothing that you're creating from this. It's like feeling the feeling, thinking the thing, right? Sharing. It's very iterative. That's how you really learn is like you try things, you put it out there, you reflect, you try. The opposite of academia, right? And even me being an academic, I'm also trying to resist a lot of those things and think more about the village and our moms and that knowledge, I think is the most important thing that I could spend my time learning about. So,
You're able to manage both skills. It's so important to also do academia. That's how we learn what not to do as well. If someone's writing about it, that's how things spread, that's how ideas spread. And I think a lot of the reasons why what's happening in the village is like it's not spreading. Like the law of the community is not spreading because they don't know these tools. And that's where you come in, that's where I come in, where we try to have podcasts, where we try to do more research. And I think that what you're doing is absolutely so beautiful. And to do it with such awareness is incredibly important. So yeah, thank you for having me.
and I want to thank everybody in the audience for joining us for this conversation. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share. And join us next time at Voices from the Laboratory. Kapjai. Bye, everybody.
Bye.